It is militarism run stark mad. So an American diplomat describes Europe in the spring of 1914, when Europe is officially at peace. In Imperial Germany, a huge peacetime army is drilled and inspired by the tradition of Prussian arms. Farm boys and gymnasium graduates serving their 3-year hitch. Sons of impoverished Junker families making a career of the army, all preparing for der Tag, the day when, in the words of their commander-in-chief, this business will have to be settled once and for all, the business of France. France, resurrecting her army from an old disgrace, 1871. Defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. 1913, a new 3-year draft law. The recruit, once a figure of ridicule, becomes the embodiment of France's mission. In the long-remembered words of author-patriot Victor Hugo, to nourish her sacred anger, to become again a great France, the France of an idea with the sword. Then she will be irresistible, and then she will take back Alsace-Lorraine. In 1914, the enemies face each other with armies 3 times as large as the last time. One of the generals fears the war will not be decided by a single battle, not until the whole strength of a people is broken. Yet the plans of the generals on both sides are staked on that single battle. The prestige of Prussian arms, the prestige of the Kaiser himself, Wilhelm II. A military buff hiding a deformed left arm in a vast wardrobe of uniforms, he likes the company of military men, the General Staff. To them, he has entrusted great influence over national policy. One becomes chancellor, calls diplomacy nonsense. By 1914, Germany is flanked by an alliance that diplomacy might have prevented, Russia and France. The Kaiser is left with Austria and the strategy of the General Staff. Its chief, General Helmut von Moltke, a man who says of himself, "I am too reflective. I lack the capacity for risking all on a single throw." Yet his predecessor, General Alfred von Schlieffen, has committed Germany to exactly this. Build no more fortresses, build railroads. This is German gospel under the Schlieffen Plan. Germany must be ready to strike more quickly than her enemies when the day comes. The annual war games, which used to end with the annual capture of the enemy by the Kaiser's side, are now conducted more realistically, with the Kaiser on the sidelines at Moltke's insistence. Our strength, the Kaiser says, lies in being ready for war at a second's notice. Ready since 1905 with the Schlieffen Plan. A plan for victory in a 2-front war. The East Front can wait. Ponderous Russia will take weeks to move. Meanwhile, in the West, the mass of the German army will be hurled against France in a single sweeping action, a battle of decision. France, knowing the day will come, has a plan of its own. Plan 17, cut off the German drive by way of Alsace-Lorraine. Plan 17, a mystique rather than a strategy. It is Victor Hugo's vision of France en route back to its lost provinces, of France irresistible, but with more idea than sword. The idea of élan, a spirit of ardor and impetuousness expressed in simple, inspiring maxims. Offensive to the limit. Whatever the circumstances, attack. France's army has been entrusted to the command of General Joseph Joffre, a slow-moving man of tremendous resolve and inflexible routine. A heavy bourgeois lunch and then a nap, whatever the circumstances. The ardor in his command is supplied by General Noël de Castelnau, his fiery chief of staff, and by General Ferdinand Foch, the leading exponent of Elan. Victory is willpower, Foch has written. Under such mottos, France faces Germany when the day comes, on August 1st, 1914. The day brought on by an Austrian mishap at a town called Sarajevo. The day the fateful clockwork of the Schlieffen Plan moves from crisis to mobilization to war. On the morning of August 4th, a troop of German Uhlans is poised at the border of neutral Belgium. Swords and lances, sun glinting on metal breastplates, smell of leather strong in the summer heat. They are the advance guard of 5 armies, 1 million men, deployed to the border by railroad, by the Schlieffen Plan. The violation of the Belgian border will prove a diplomatic disaster. But diplomacy must give way to strategy, to the plans of the General Staff. Belgium is the route into France, the route of the strong right wing with which Schlieffen planned to circle behind the French armies and envelop them in his single massive sweep. 6 weeks to Paris and victory. On his deathbed 2 years before, Schlieffen is supposed to have murmured, "Keep the right wing strong." The first roadblock in the German path is the fortress city of Liège, an industrial center with a bristling hedge of guns and concrete. Moltke's armies try to take it by storm. When German manpower, after appalling losses, fails to dent the Belgian forts, German firepower takes over. Siege guns like nothing seen or felt in war before. Squat monsters from Austria's Skoda munitions works, brought up in 3 motor-driven sections with their Austrian crews. Guns from the Krupp works in Germany, requiring 200 attendants and firing shells a yard long. It will be a war of terror weapons. On August 16th, after 12 days of punishment, the defenses of Liège collapse. The timetable has suffered no serious setback, only 2 days delay, only the jolt of casualties. A German general is surprised by the peculiar thud of bullets striking bodies. The right wing sweeps on, though it is not quite the right wing Schlieffen envisioned. Moltke has tempered it with the caution of his own personality. Where Schlieffen wrote, "Let the last man on the right brush the channel with his sleeve," Moltke has flattened the arc. Where Schlieffen would mass 7/8 of his forces for the drive, Moltke has held whole divisions back to meet the threat on his left. the threat of French Plan 17. Plan 17 in motion. Dragoons in horsehair plumes and metal body armor to protect against saber cuts. Artillery that is to be used, not to prepare attack, but only to support it. The force, the élan, must come from the soldier himself. The poilu, dressed in red trousers and blue coats. The colors of a perfect target. On August 14th, as the Germans are wheeling past Liège, the French return to Alsace-Lorraine. The tricolor appears in the streets of liberated towns. 6 days later, Moltke's left wing drives them back. The horsemen in their traditional armor, the poilu in their traditional colors, have run into the weapons of a new age. By August 25th, the tricolor is gone from Alsace. Plan 17 is finished. The French are in retreat. August 1914 on the Eastern Front. German towns in the scrubby farmland of East Prussia under bombardment by the advancing Russian armies. Nothing to slow them down but the streams of German refugees clogging the roads, that and their own faulty organization. According to the calculations of the Schlieffen Plan, it would take the cumbersome Russian steamroller 6 weeks to gather momentum. But in less than half that time, Russia has somehow mounted an offensive. 2 Russian armies, their ragged discipline trimmed by the Tsar's prohibition edict, which keeps vodka out of the troops' hands. One army, under General Pavel Rennenkampf, pauses. Another, under Alexander Samsonov, rushes up to meet it and close the pincers on the Germans. The team of German generals, old Paul von Hindenburg, brought out of retirement, and the younger Erich Ludendorff, rushed east from victory at Liège, now begin to direct the countermeasures. The solution already plotted by a junior officer, already anticipated by years of general staff planning. The solution lies in the railroads. An entire Army Corps, 25,000 men, on the move from one part of the front to the other. 2 more march overland and 3 others are shipped cross-country from the West Front by Moltke. He is borrowing from his strong right wing, spreading the risk unnecessarily. Leaving only a thin screen of cavalry in the north, where Rennenkampf's attack has halted, the Germans shift their weight to meet Samsonov in the south. Rushing toward his scheduled rendezvous, he plunges into the German trap, is annihilated. Disaster near a wooded hill called Tannenberg. His army disintegrating, Samsonov commits suicide. The steamroller goes into reverse. By August 30th, the Germans have won the war's first great victory. On the Western Front, Joffre welcomes an ally, Horatio Herbert Kitchener, Lord Kitchener of Khartoum, hero of campaigns in the Sudan. His British Expeditionary Force, barely settled into position alongside the French, has already been dislodged by the German First Army, its command headed by General Alexander von Kluck. Kluck is the key man in the Schlieffen Plan. On the strong right wing, his army is the loaded wingtip. Now, in the last week of August, it is making its crucial arc, swinging from Belgium into the factory cities of northeast France and on toward Paris, circling the Allied flank. Along the roads, scenes from a bitter episode of history are being reenacted. French families in flight from a German invasion, echoes of 1871. As the capital digs in against another siege, the American ambassador makes plans to go out and meet the German commander at the outskirts, with a request to see the Kaiser and a plea to spare the city. An old soldier, General Joseph Simon Gallieni, has been summoned from retirement to take command of the city's defenses. Around him, the government of France breaks up, reorganizes, and finally, on September 2nd, clears out to safety in Bordeaux. Left in charge of a frightened capital, Gallieni orders its citizens to the barricades. On September 3rd, a flimsy, canvas-covered machine rises from a pasture outside Paris. A machine of which the official French estimate only 4 years ago was, the airplane is for sport, mission, reconnaissance. The flight confirms a startling development, which ground intelligence has received with skepticism. The German columns now bearing down on Paris are starting to veer away. The strong right wing, thinned down by mopping up operations in Belgium and by the dispatch of troops to the East Front, worn down by marches as long as 28 miles a day, the strong right wing is swerving off course. Kluck, commanding the army on the right, has decided to make the turn in pursuit of the retreating British. His commander-in-chief, Moltke, increasingly nervous about the Schlieffen Plan, welcomes the chance to change it. Instead of waiting to trap the Allies by sweeping around Paris, he will crush them now. As a new pattern forms on the battle maps, an officer in Paris headquarters exults. They offer us their flank. Against the exposed German flank, Gallieni strikes with troops from his Paris Defense Force. The entire Allied command now galvanizes. The attack from Paris forces Kluck to shift his troops, leaving a gap in the German lines. The British turned to attack it. Before this, they were facing the coast, desperately seeking some port of escape back to England. From Paris now, Gallieni starts pouring out the rest of his army by any means at hand, by taxis rounded up along the boulevards. By September 6th, the Allied redeployment has flattened the march of the German armies into a 200-mile front, from Paris east along the River Marne. There the enemies collide in a battle that neither side planned. rising, stroke by stroke, under Joffre's placid direction, the Allies chop away at the invaders. On September 9th, German commanders in the field make a worried assessment of their situation. The gap in their lines has widened. There is a risk that Kluck's army will be cut off. A decision is made. Retreat. Behind them, the retreating Germans leave the wreckage of the Schlieffen Plan, abandoned like the French Plan 17. But in their withdrawal from the Marne, the Germans make one last effort to swing around the Allied flank in the north. The Allies fend them off by extending their flank, like a moving hedge in the German path. The route of the two armies in their race to the sea becomes the line called the Western Front. The trench line, a line of bitter stalemate. The Germans dig in to hold their gains. The Allies dig in because they have no choice. Their ammunition exhausted by the unexpected fury of the war's first campaigns. The German commander, Moltke, his health and nerves broken by failure, has told the Kaiser, "Your Majesty, we have lost the war." But what has happened is neither victory nor defeat. Only the hollow click of deadlock. The Germans are installed on French soil. The Allies will be compelled to evict them by attack, whatever the circumstances. By the failure of their plans, the generals have condemned Europe to 4 bitter years in the trenches of the Western Front.